Some people enter our lives like sacred interruptions, not with noise, but with a strange familiarity, as if your soul recognized them before your eyes ever did. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just fate. It felt like a mirror had appeared. One that showed you parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. You looked at them and something inside you trembled. A memory that didn't belong to this lifetime stirred in your chest. You weren't just falling for someone, you were collapsing into a part of yourself that longed to be seen. At first, it felt divine. The connection, the timing, the intensity, like your soul had finally come home. But then, they left, and it shattered you in a way no logic could fix. And now you sit in that silence, trying to understand how something so profound could also be so painful. But maybe the point was never about forever. Maybe the point was revelation. You didn't attract that person because you were ready to love. You attracted them because you were ready to see your wounds, your projections, your repressed stories. They didn't come to complete you. They came to confront you. And when they walked away, they took with them the illusion you had built, but left you with something far more sacred. The chance to begin again, from truth, from depth, from soul. Not every connection is meant to stay, but every connection is meant to awaken. Some people don't break your heart, they break your masks, and that's how the healing begins. Carl Jung taught us that what we repress internally will eventually return, not as a thought, but as a person. And when it does not ask for permission. It comes wrapped in longing. It wears the face of love. But it is not here to soothe you. It is here to reveal you. This person. They were not random. They were your shadow, embodied. The part of you that you exiled to survive. The parts you denied to be accepted. They came to the surface, wearing their smile, speaking your silence. Jung called the shadow everything we refuse to see in ourselves, fears, desires, truths too raw for the surface. It does not disappear, it waits. And when the moment is right, it returns through another. That's why you felt so drawn to them, not because they were perfect, but because they were familiar. On a soul level, they mirrored your unlived life, and that recognition pierced you. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. They weren't just your lover. They were your reflection, the confrontation you had spent years avoiding. The more intense the connection, the more primal the mirror, because in the depth of that encounter your shadow saw itself and demanded to be known. You didn't attract them because your heart was healed. You attracted them because your soul was ready to rupture, to awaken. This wasn't about romantic completion. It was about psychic confrontation. It was your spirit trying to come home through the echo of another's presence. They touched the edges of your becoming, and when they left, they didn't abandon you. They initiated you. There comes a moment when the noise of heartbreak gives way to a deeper kind of silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of revelation. You step away, not to escape the pain, but to honor it. This is not loneliness. This is sacred withdrawal, the retreat from the persona, the false self, the mask you wore to be loved. Now it's crumbling, and in the quiet, something ancient in you is reawakening. Carl Jung understood this descent. He called it a return to the self, the core, the divine nucleus of who you are beneath the conditioning. To reach it, the persona must fall, the ego must grieve, the soul must be still. That person you lost, they didn't just leave you. They took with them the version of you that was trying too hard to be enough. And now, stripped of pretense, you face yourself, bare, silent, true. This silence is not empty. It is full of voices you once silenced to fit in. It is full of parts of you waiting to be reclaimed. It is the temple of becoming, When the outer connection dissolves, the inner alchemy begins, and you find yourself walking through the desert, not as a punishment, but as initiation. In this sacred space of withdrawal, you don't need to be seen. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to perform healing. You are not broken. You are being rewritten. Silence is not the absence of love. It is its most ancient language. There is a sacred grief woven through the pages of Scripture, a grief not to be rushed, not to be solved, but to be walked through like a holy wilderness. When David cried out in the Psalms, "My soul is in deep anguish. How long, Lord, how long?" Psalm 6:3. He wasn't just expressing pain, he was naming the ache of disconnection, the same ache that follows the departure of a soul that once mirrored our own. The Bible does not shame the wound, it sanctifies it. It speaks to the soul not as something to be fixed, but as something being formed, not in comfort, but in fire, not in arrival, but in the letting go. Think of Job, sitting in ashes, stripped of everything familiar. Not because he was unworthy, but because he was being rebuilt from the inside. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Job 13:15. This is not blind faith, it is broken faith, the kind that emerges when everything you held as certain collapses. And yet, something remains. The same God who allows the loss also whispers in the silence, not always with answers, but always with presence. The ending of that relationship may have felt like abandonment, but biblically, it might have been an invitation. A desert moment, a place where illusions burn away and only truth remains. Isaiah speaks this mystery with tenderness. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. Hosea 2:14. The wilderness is not the end. It is the space where false loves die so that deeper love can begin. That person was not your salvation, but their departure may be. For in the silence they left behind, God begins to speak. There is a sacred moment that happens in the dark, after the tears have dried, after the questions have quieted, after the soul stops reaching outward for answers. It's not dramatic, it's not visible, but it is holy. It is the moment you stop chasing what left and begin listening to what remains. This is where true transformation begins, not in noise, not in validation, but in stillness. You stop asking why they left, and you start asking what stayed. What version of yourself is emerging now that the mask has fallen? What part of your soul is being rewritten in the silence? Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming is not loud. It is quiet. It is loss-activated. It is born in the dark where no one is watching but God. The relationship didn't just end, it initiated you into authenticity, into alignment, into the raw, untamed self you were always meant to live from. This is where the individuation begins, not as a concept, but as a felt reality, where your identity no longer depends on who stays, but on who you are when all is stripped away. The grief becomes grace, the silence becomes sanctuary, the departure becomes destiny. You no longer need to be needed. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer need to chase love. You are no longer fractured. You are no longer fragmented. You are returning to soul, to God, to center. This is the alchemy of absence, the gold hidden inside the Nigredo, where the self you mourned becomes the self you were always becoming. If this spoke to your soul, it's because something ancient in you is remembering, not them, not the love, but the part of yourself you once buried for the sake of connection. This was never just about the other person. This was about the self trying to rise, about God using heartbreak as a threshold, about the invisible becoming visible through the mirror of another soul. You didn't fail. You awakened. You didn't lose love. You lost the layer of yourself that begged for it. And now you can love from a place that doesn't need to be rescued. You can belong without performing. You can stand alone and still feel held. Some people were never meant to stay, but they were meant to initiate, to touch the edges of your soul and remind you of its shape. This was not random, not them, not the ending. It was design, it was divine, it was a door. And now, if you feel these words resting in your chest, if something in you is still and seen and sacred, leave your mark below. Let the others know you have passed through the fire and returned. Write in the comments, "I am reborn in the silence of God," because your healing is not a performance. It is a quiet resurrection, and in this space you are not alone.